Good evening or good morning, wherever you are in the world. I'm Regina Yao, founder and president of the Pixel Project, and I'm moderating the 9th YouTube session of the 8th International Women's Day edition of our Read for Pixels campaign. Now, through Read for Pixels, the Pixel Project is collaborating with 14 award-winning best-selling authors to raise awareness about violence against women and to raise funds for the Pixel Project to keep our efforts to end violence against women alive to end violence against women alive and kicking. We'll be telling you more about the Read for Pixels fundraiser, which has lots and lots of exclusive goodies a little later in this session. And you can find out more about the Pixel Project and our work to end violence against women by visiting www.thepixelproject.net. Now, we have a very special guest for today's live Read for Pixels discussion and Q&A session, the acclaimed USA Today best-selling fantasy romance and space opera romance author Amanda Bouchet. Now, Amanda writes books with equal parts adventure and kissing, and she was a Goodreads Choice Awards Top 10 finalist for the best debut in 2016 with her first novel, A Promise of Fire. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you.
And you, Amanda, have also generously donated some wonderful exclusive giveaways to the stash of author treats we have up as perks for donors at the Read for Pixels Rally App fundraising page, and these are available for donors worldwide. So the first goodie is for those of you who love reading Amanda's book. So it's Amanda's A Promise of Fire bundle. So Amanda's offering one generous Read for Pixels donor a very special bundle, which includes a copy of A Promise of Fire in the new edition trade paperback. And Amanda will sign and personalize it for you. And she'll add in 2 bookmarks and this is really special, a typed and signed note from a character of the donor's choice. So you can pick any of Amanda's characters and Amanda will type out the note from them, a message from them to you. And if you are new to Amanda's wonderful and action-packed fantasy worlds, this is a great way to get started while donating to support the cause to end violence against women and girls. Now, the second one is for all of you novice aspiring authors out there. It's the Amanda Bouchet Critique Bundle. Now, if you are a novice fantasy romance or science fiction, space opera romance author looking for a professional critique of your work, Amanda is offering a most excellent critique bundle for one Read for Pixels donor. So this bundle includes, now you have a choice here. You can have one written critique of your query letter draft plus the first 10 pages of your work in progress, or you can have ask Amanda to critique the first 20 pages of your work in progress. So you have a choice there. And after that, Amanda will do a 30-minute Zoom call with you to discuss the critique. So you get a chance for 30 minutes to ask Amanda questions about, her, all the, whatever remarks that comments that she had made in writing on your critique. And this, I can tell you, everyone, this is really valuable because it's not just, pinging back and forth on email. You can ask Amanda in real time for 30 minutes and get a bit of mentoring that way. So please note that this is for English language works only, and any subgenre of romance fiction is welcome.
That's right.
So as of now, we've raised $2,077 towards our fundraising, $5,000 fundraising goal. So please give generously before the fundraiser ends on April 15, 2022. And all funds goes towards keeping our work to end violence against women afloat. And now, if you are watching the session on YouTube right now, you will also be able to ask Amanda questions live. Now, just make sure you're logged into your YouTube account so that you can type your questions into the chat box to the right of the YouTube screen. And Xiao Chen, who is today's producer and chat box moderator, will relay them to me to read out to Amanda to answer. Now, just again, make sure you are logged in. Otherwise, you won't be able to type anything in. And now over to Amanda. What will you be reading for us today, Amanda?
Well, I decided to read a part from my new series called the Night Chaser series, which is the space opera romance. So A Promise of Fire and the fantasy romance is definitely my most well-known series, and it's a lot of fun, the Kingmaker Chronicles. But I chose Night Chaser because it's almost the book of my heart, and I love these characters. The heroine is Tess, the hero is Shade, and they are fighting the good fight. I call Tess my Robin Hood female captain. She's a rebel spaceship captain leading a band of sort of a motley crew of rebels against the evil overseer, who is the oppressive force in the galaxy. And she ends up needing Shade's help to repair her ship. He's a mechanic. And unfortunately, what she doesn't know is that he has some conflicting interests when they meet. And he's going to have to make a decision about where he goes with that, whether he throws his lot in with Tess or not. So it's a steamy, adventurous science fiction romance. I actually don't like to call it science fiction because it's not very sciencey. It's more science fantasy, I would say, more on the Star Wars side. So this is Night Chaser's my Robin Hood meets Star Wars space opera adventure. So I decided to read a little section from that. I'm going to have to put my glasses on to do that because I can't see anything anymore close. So I'll get started. So basically, Tess has landed on a planet called Albion 5, and she needs her spaceship repaired because she just had a big shoot-'em-up battle that she barely made it out of. She meets Shade, who accepts the job to help repair her ship, and they're just getting to know each other, and she's interested, and he's thinking, what am I going to do with this woman? Because he thinks she's fantastic, but there's some, like I said, some conflicts of interest. So I won't give anything else away, but if you'd like to read it after this, it's called Night Chaser. So I'll start with, I'm in chapter 5, I believe. Let me just say, no, chapter 8. So I'm in chapter 8 with this excerpt. Here, I'm going to just push this back a little. Okay, so we've got Tess, the captain of the spaceship, and her crew is Jackson, Miko, and Shiori, who are a family. It's a granddaughter and grandmother, and Fiona, who is their resident botanist. And these are all people on the run from the authorities, and they banded together after a prison break, actually. So here we go. We're in Tess's point of view. I reach up, and Jackson gripped my wrists and easily lifted me back onto the ship. If Shade had needed a demonstration of Jax's strength, he'd gotten one. Not many people could haul a nearly 6-foot woman straight up. Together, Jax and I headed for the smell of strong coffee. Jax made the best cups. We met Fiona in the entranceway to the kitchen. Her hair was still damp from her shower, and she looked fresher than I'd felt in days. It had been her turn today. Miko was next. I'd get a shower again after that. Maybe Shade knew where to buy half-priced water and discounted recycling tanks. In the meantime, luckily for all of us and our noses, extra-strength deodorant was cheap. Who's the tall set of muscles poking around our ship? Fiona asked me with a bit of a grin. Shade Ganavan. Her eyebrows slowly went up. Got anything more to say about that? I fought my own grin and started with the most obvious. Easily 6'2", 200 pounds, dark brown hair, light brown eyes, flirty in the afternoon, grumpy in the morning. Fiona laughed. Maybe he needs some coffee. Maybe, or some rest. The guy looked like he hadn't slept a wink. He definitely hadn't changed his clothes or shaved. Something uncomfortable slid sideways through my chest. Had he flirted with me and then gone off and been with some other woman all night? I forced the slight pang to keep going and slide right on out. None of my business. Miko had eggs, bacon, and potatoes on the table for her and Shiori already. Jax was pouring the coffee for everyone, so I got his, Fiona's, and my plates, while Fiona peeled our daily orange and doled out the parts. Oranges were often hard to split evenly into 5, and if there was an extra wedge, Fiona always made sure that Shiori got it. Grandmother was the only one who couldn't see that she was getting more than the rest of us, and no one ever told her. So how much are the repairs going to cost us? Jax asked. I told them, and everyone stopped eating. They'd go back to their meals eventually, but for the moment, they were absorbing the fact that our safe was about to get cleaned out. Are you sure this guy's prices are reasonable? Miko asked. Maybe you should shop around before you let him get started. The idea of making multiple inquiries left me uneasy. The less any of us talked to other people or walked around Albion City, or anywhere for that matter, the better. I was already going to have to go down to street level again to try to sell those books. I just hoped there were some people on Albion 5 who still liked reading old tomes. Even though the official ban had finally been lifted on many of the surviving texts, most people were still too nervous to pick up anything without the galactic seal of approval on it. Approved books were all propaganda-filled, glory to the overseer, brainwashing hogwash, but at least they didn't get you harassed. It's a little steep, I answered about Shade's pricing, but I don't think I'll find much better anywhere else on this rock. Jackson agreed, and he knew metal and labor costs even better than I did. Besides, I added, Shade offered to find us a new armored door for half price. They all stopped eating again. Jax looked at me as if I'd lost my mind. I frowned. What? A guy doesn't just give you an armored door, he said. I didn't say he was giving it to me. I said it would be half price. It's practically the same thing, he muttered, setting his coffee mug down a little too forcefully. There must be something wrong with him. Or, Jax narrowed his eyes at me. What? I asked again. We're leaving this place, Tess. Don't get attached. I did that turtle thing again. Turtles were onto something with their retractable heads. You're crazy, Jax. I don't even know the guy. If he's giving you a deal like that on a reinforced door, he wants to know you. Low down, my belly clenched. Is that true? And what's the harm in that? Fiona asked. She pushed her untouched mug toward me. Why don't you take him a cup of coffee and see what you think of him? Jackson swung an incredulous look on Fiona. Don't encourage her, Fi. Fiona rolled her eyes, somehow managing to make her ponytail swing without even moving her head. Just because you never want to see anyone again in your whole life apart from the four of us doesn't mean that Tess has to stay shut up in this metal box. True, although I liked my metal box. Jax waved a hand through the air, whispering, Everyone out there is looking for us. Not everyone, Jackson. Fiona met his dark eyes with some pretty fierce eyes of her own. They were green, like her plants. And not everyone is looking to take her away from you, from us. He quietly set down his fork and sat back in his chair when I thought what he really wanted to do was throw the utensil across the kitchen and break his plate. You never know when they'll strike, Jack said so flatly it hurt my heart. You're right. They could strike any time, Fiona agreed quickly. That's all the more reason to live. Jax flinched, and Fiona looked momentarily horrified, as though she feared she'd gone too far. We're careful, Jax. We're all careful, I said, although I didn't know if I should have been soothing him or helping Fiona to rile him up. I was pretty sure some smashed dishes and an explosive bellow would have done him a galaxy of good. Sometimes I wished he would fill his lungs with his pain and fury and shake the ship with them. Good, he finally answered, his face turning into a wall, flat and blank. Fiona's expression went in the opposite direction, bursting with emotion, and they stared at each other for a moment before Jax disconnected, shifting his gaze to the side. Sadness crept through me, and irrepressible Fiona suddenly drooped, although she probably thought she was hiding it. Some things were only secrets here because nobody talked about them, and I wanted to scream at Jax, to look right in front of him instead of behind. You know who Tess is now. Jax picked up the conversation again in a monotone that reminded me of the grieving man on the mile, the one who might never let himself get over his dead wife. There isn't a single person alive who doesn't know who she is. Yeah, and they all think she's been dead for the last 18 years, Fiona shot back. That's a good point, I said. Everyone in the galaxy thought I died from the same mysterious fever that had taken my mother, when in fact, I'd never been sick a day in my life. Not even when the other children in the orphanage had been dropping all around me, killed off by infections and diseases with cures. There are more people searching for our Tess than for a ghost, Shiori said, looking across the table at Fiona but not quite hitting her mark. Her milky eyes landed somewhere between Fiona and me. Exactly, Jackson agreed, turning a pointed look my way. His expression regained only enough life to look satisfied that Shiori had helped prove his point. People everywhere, looking for Tess. Well, I doubted it. Shade Ganavan, space rogue, was one of them, and I hardly thought Tess was that important. The great rebel wheel was full of cogs, and I hardly signified. At most, I was worth a lethal injection, and the overseer had plenty of those. That said, I didn't want to get caught. But I also wouldn't stop doing what I needed to do just because I feared the possible consequences. Fear was something I could accept. Abandoning the galaxy to a group of despots was not. I have a plan for how to pay for the repairs. I stood up, finishing my portion of the orange and then grabbing Fiona's and my mugs. Thanks, Vi. She nodded since she was chewing her food. Tess. I turned back to Jax from the doorway, the 2 mugs in my hands, and gave him my most reassuring smile. He lost his sister to the heat and murderous roar of the galactic military's flamethrowers that day, too. She'd been visiting, helping out with the newborn. Some days, I thought he forgot I wasn't her. Most days, I was glad he thought I was. Don't worry, partner. I'll be careful. He knows this place, and I have to pick his brains about where to sell some rare books. Jax pressed his lips together and didn't say anything else. It was Miko who surprised me, because I knew she dropped out of the conversation and crawled into herself the moment Fiona and Jax had hinted at Shade wanting anything more from me than universal currency. Miko liked to pretend that no one ever had urges because they scared her half to death. If I were ever to take up praying again, I'd pray that someone, someday, could show Miko that intimacy could involve tenderness instead of violence. He used to kick his dogs. She looked my way, but I didn't think she was seeing me, or any of us. Why would anyone kick a dog, Tess? My chest tightened and I shook my head. He kicked Miko too, I'd bet. I was glad the bastard was dead. I don't know. There's no reason for that. Don't trust anyone you think would kick a dog, Miko said. She still looked as though her thoughts were focused far away, but she knew what she was saying, and it was solid advice.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. I like that section because it gives us an insight into all the different characters that surround Tess and make up her found family, which is an important theme in my writing. And it shows what they've been through and hints at their personalities and the choices that they're going to make as time goes on. So I thought that was a nice passage.
Yeah. And so let's go straight into the discussion. So all your stories feature complex female protagonists such as Kat and Jocasta in the Kingmaker Chronicles series and Captain Taz Bailey, whom we just met, in the Night Chaser series. And they are all independent, resourceful, and compelling women with agency who do their best with the cards that they are dealt with in life. So who or what are the inspiration behind your female characters?
Well, I don't think there's any one particular person. I have lots of females that I admire in my life. My mother, my sister, my daughter, and who she's becoming. I think I'm not sure that I take inspiration from one particular person, but more from what I like to see in women around me and how they act, and frankly, in men and women around me, because I like to show characters with responsibility and who, if they see a problem, they don't ignore it. They put themselves in danger to do what they feel is the right thing. And if more people did that, men or women all over the world, then I think we'd be in a better place right now.
Definitely. And fantasy, space opera, and romance are genres that have their share of female stereotypes and tropes. And your books cross genres, be it the Kingmaker Chronicles, which is a fantasy romance series, or the Night Chaser series, which is space opera with a major romance threaded through it. So it's not a stretch to assume that the risk of stereotyping is doubled when there's more than one genre at play. So how do you break genre stereotypes of women in your books to create distinctive female characters with their own agency when dealing with the world around them, including sexism, misogyny, and violence against women?
Well, I think they just are take no nonsense, take no crap women. So if they see themselves being put in a position that they don't agree with, they fight back. And but luckily this is fiction, so fighting back, for the main heroine of a book, yes, it can lead to difficult situations and maybe injuries or whatever, but they're going to come out okay in the end. And that's part of what that's part of what makes it possible in a fantasy world or a futuristic world. It makes it possible to show women acting in very courageous ways in these big situations, big life or death, and things that, you know, are can be almost disproportionate, but that give us an insight into, you know, situations that we can face in our own lives too, and maybe, you know, how to be courageous as we confront them.
Yeah. And you know, what I really like personally about your female characters is that they're very human. They have
Yeah.
their flaws, and you know, and it's what makes the adventure, right? So they have to navigate through all these difficult and challenging situations while being flawed human beings. But you know, over the years, quite a few female Read for Pixels authors have told us that they have felt cultural and social and even commercial pressure to
Mm-hmm.
ensure that their female characters are likable or relatable. Have you ever felt the same pressure?
No. I think that part of the success of the Kingmaker Chronicles was that Kat was almost an anti-heroine. Her story arc brings her to being a full-on heroine for sure, but she starts out almost as an anti-heroine. And one person I know said that, you know, if you put her in the Harry Potter world, she's not a Gryffindor, she's a Slytherin. And I thought that was perfect, because it doesn't mean she's going to end up being evil, right? But it just means that she's not all goody nice either, you know. And that was definitely, she's sort of my Slytherin heroine. And so no, I didn't feel any pressure to make her likable. And I think what made that book special was that for at least the 3/4 of the first book, she's not entirely likable, and that's what makes her so funny. And like, because she just spouts off and she's so sarcastic, but that's counterbalanced by the fact that she always does the right thing, and she always has everyone's back, and she's watching out for the people who need her, and she's watching out for she's protecting people who are less powerful than herself, and so she's always using her strength to protect other people, even if she doesn't like them at first. If they're not inherently bad guys, she's like, oh, darn it, I guess I'll help them out anyway, you know. But she does it sort of against her will, and only it's not entirely against her will, and it makes her so funny because she's so conflicted. But she always ends up doing the right thing, which makes her a heroine. But she's got this, you know, bit of an anti-heroine vibe going too. And Tess is nothing like that, but she's so determined. She's like, she knows everything's black and white. It's like she knows right from wrong, and she will fight the fight of what's right, you know, no matter what. So, and then Jocasta is an interesting heroine in my upcoming book coming out in October, Curse of Queens, because she's much more mature and much more balanced. She's competent. She's a healer. She knows exactly what she wants and what she's fighting for, and she just goes out and gets it no matter what. So I don't know. I love writing strong women, strong heroines, and I love that they're relatable. So it's interesting that you said that. They're in these larger than life situations, but what I think makes people love my heroines is that they remain so human, even in these mythological or futuristic or just catastrophic situations that you can't even imagine in real life. But their reactions and how they react, their choices, the relationships that they develop, it's just so relatable. And I think it's fun to have that balance also in a fantasy world with something that's so human and yet so foreign.
Yeah, and you know, speaking of relationships, your books include a range of female relationships, including friendship, sisterhood, and rivalries that feel very real to many female readers. What can you suggest for writers who want to write female conversations and relationships realistically or at least plausibly?
Well, it's interesting because not long ago, an acquaintance of mine, a writer friend, contacted me and said she was writing in the first person for the first time, and she was worried because she just felt like she was just projecting herself into the character, and she shouldn't do that, and the character should be separate. And so we hopped on a video chat together, and I said, well, actually, that's exactly what I do. I mean, I think I write the character, especially in first person, well, either way, but we were talking about first person. The situation exterior, of course, is very different than my own life, but I write the character according to their situation, how I would react and how I would deal with my both male and female relationships, what I'd want out of them, what I would react badly to, what I would react well to, how I'd like it to evolve. And so we chatted, and I said, I don't think it's a bad thing that you project yourself onto the character. I think each plot line is so different that you're inserting these realistic expectations or realistic feelings that you could have, or your sister or your whoever. But the external situation makes it so different from real life that it's interesting too. I mean, this isn't actually happening to you, but how would you react if you were there? And so I didn't think it was a bad thing to project yourself. And maybe doing that is what creates, relatable characters. It doesn't mean I am Kat or I am Tess. It's just, I feel like I could react this way in this situation or to this person. And maybe that's what makes it, feel more realistic.
Yeah, and we do have a related question from the audience. It's a two-parter because YouTube doesn't let people type beyond a certain number of so bear with us. So Missy 306, and Missy is one of our loyal audience members, and she attends nearly every session that we have. And she's a librarian.
I love librarians.
Yeah. So Missy says, you write female characters with power, literal and figurative, and with agency to influence any necessary changes in their world. These characters get to decide on what the world needs through their choices. So should more authors write about their powerful female characters making the needed changes to the world based on their experiences in the books? In turn, this could influence the readers.
That's a complicated question. I don't feel like I set out to teach anyone anything. When I set out to entertain when I write a book. My Kingmaker Chronicles are based in a world full of Greek mythology, but my goal isn't to teach people a history lesson or about Greek mythology. It's just integrated into a way that feels organic to the story, and it adds things. And so in terms of this question, I'm not sure that I think of a situation and try to influence anyone's, reactions to real life through that. But I think that seeing strong characters make difficult and important decisions empowers us as readers to feel like that's possible. I think it's maybe you're going through something hard in life, a situation, a relationship, and something in a book can show you that that's not all that exists, that you deserve, love, you deserve a partner who's committed to you and loves you for both your good and your, and your not so good parts. And we're all human, and that's what we need. I'm not sure on a bigger picture. We take the heroine, she leads a revolution to, overthrow the current ruling power. I don't know that means my reader should go out and start leading revolutions, but I think there are little revolutions too. I mean, everything you do, even just contributing, you only have $10 to spare, you contribute those to a cause that helps other people, for example, or you offer, you have a raincoat and someone doesn't, and they need it more than you do, you offer it. I think it's little gestures like that maybe people can bring out of strong heroines in a book. But my character situations are so big, it's real life or death, and, battles and blood, and I kind of don't hope anyone's getting into that because of reading my books, in real life. Does that answer the question?
So, Kitty, we've got another one from the audience. Kitty Kate, Who is your favorite book character, Amanda? Which character was fun to write most and least fun?
Favorite book character. I kind of always love the one I'm writing currently. So Kat, of course, was a lot of fun, and she was in my head for so long because her trilogy is completed, and it was 3 books and 3 long books. And her story arc was really meaningful to me. She's a person who didn't trust anyone, and she learned to trust. She didn't think she could be loved, and she learned that she could be loved. She didn't think she had it in her to be responsible for an entire world, and it turns out she does. So, and in the meantime, she never lost her edge, where she's kind of sarcastic and kind of a little crazy and not always nice, but that's out on the outside. She might not always be nice, but on the inside she is. And I loved having that, playing on that, since it was in first person too with Kat. I had her internal thoughts and then what she projected, and sometimes they just didn't match up at all. And that was part of I know people have said they laugh out loud when they read Kat, and that's partly why, because what she projects and what she's actually thinking are so different sometimes. So yeah, I would say Kat is still, if I have to pick one of all my characters, she was the most fun to write. I think Tess is the one I feel the most connected to in terms of her personality and how she actually behaves and what she actually does and thinks. And I love Jocasta for tons of reasons. Least fun to write, it would have to be some kind of side character or something. I don't know. Because if I don't like writing someone, I wouldn't make them a main character. I don't think there's anyone I found unenjoyable to write. There's characters I like to dislike. Like one of the Griffin's brothers in the Night Chase in the Kingmaker Chronicles, Pierce. I didn't like him, and I made him fairly unlikable. And then what was fun is that I wrote a novella, which just came out in an anthology at Christmas, where it's Pierce's redemption, basically. And at the end, I didn't dislike him because he wasn't inherently an evil character. He was just short-sighted and not doing what he needed to do. But then in the novella, by the end of it, I loved him. So that was fun. So he had his redemption arc and learned from his mistakes and got his happily ever after too. So.
Okay, so now back to the discussion. So over the past 10 to 15 years, the hero in many romance books has significantly evolved, and we are seeing a far wider range of heroes and other male characters as well. So this is certainly apparent in your books on Griffin, who goes through this entire arc from, he started out behaving badly, to put it mildly, but he became ultimately extremely supportive as Kat's second in command, and all the way to Sheikh Ganaban, who treats Tess as an equal from the moment they met. So do you think reframing how stories describe men away from hostile and toxic stereotypes and towards complexity and even vulnerability can be one of the ways that romance writers and even fantasy authors can break away from hostile tropes that promote toxic masculinity and the dehumanization of women?
Absolutely. I think that's what we need to do. We need to write male characters that give a good example. I mean, honestly, it's mostly females reading romance. And I think it's important to project the kind of man that brings a healthy relationship to a woman. And maybe that's where the influence, the question we had earlier is how things could influence real life women. I'd rather see real life women looking at their relationships and saying, no, I deserve better than this, and I'm going to go out and get it. That's the kind of thing I want to see people taking out of my books, if they're going to take something out of it, rather than, leading a revolution. And I also think it's interesting to write a character like Griffin, who does evolve. He does start out I mean, he's a tribal warlord and he just overtook a kingdom. He's kind of a macho man. And he doesn't, make great decisions at first, but there's nothing inherently evil about him. So of course he can be a hero, and he learns from Kat, really, and from the relationship he wants with her. He learns how to be really and he becomes a feminist, in my opinion. Griffin is my feminist hero because he is all about bringing Kat to where she needs to be. He doesn't want the power or glory for himself. He's looking out for the greater good, and he knows that happens through Kat. So he supports her every step of the way. And so for me, even if he makes terrible decisions in the beginning, like, hey, let's kidnap this woman and see what happens, he evolves into what is essentially a feminist, and I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and do you think that the violent alpha male type character that most people see Griffin as, for example, at the beginning, would phase out of genre fiction like romance as cultures worldwide start kicking out toxic masculinity, or do you think it's one of those stereotypes that will stick around for much longer than expected?
I think it would be a little boring in fiction to flatten out nobody, who do you know? I know I certainly have made mistakes in life. I don't know anyone who doesn't make a stupid decision, regret it, and hopefully learn from it. And so if you don't have your characters doing that, then it's totally unrealistic, in my opinion. So you can't have the perfect boy next door doing everything perfectly, never putting a foot out of place, never saying the wrong thing, never making a stupid decision, because who wants to read that? It's kind of like real life. We all have I want life to be safe and everything, but if I'm reading a book, do I really want just my own boring life? So I think that if we just level everything out, we're losing something in fiction. But what's important is the story arc that brings people understanding and solidifies relationships, and we end up with a couple who is a real team, equal players who respect each other and love each other. And how you get there can vary, and how the characters evolve and where they start from and how far they have to come, that can all be different. But if you already start out just with everything perfect, then you have nowhere to go. So I don't honestly think that taking out anything that could be construed as toxic masculinity out of books is actually a good thing, because don't we want to show that maybe you want to take something like that and show how to evolve out of it?
Okay. Yeah, that's true, actually, because we want to show how people learn, right? So people learn from their mistakes, and one of the things that the Pixel Project, one of the stances that the Pixel Project has taken from the start is, we want to show hope, that there's hope for change. I mean, what are we working towards if we don't have even any hope for change, and we're just going to say this is bad, this is bad. This is bad, but how are we going to change it? That's what
exactly. And some people you might be coming from a place where you're not aware that it's bad or that you're being treated badly. You might not even be aware of that without an influence like that, seeing something in a book where you recognize something of your own life, and then you see how the characters evolve out of it, for example. So yeah, I think it's important to show that exists, because then if you don't, aren't you just ignoring the problem rather than showing maybe a potential way out of it, even if it means leaving behind a toxic relationship and finding something hopefully new and better.
Yeah. Oh, we have a question about Griffin from the audience. So Zarna12 asks, really loved all your characters, but is Griffin from Kingmaker Chronicles based off of anyone or inspired by anyone?
No, he's not based off of anyone. He just sprung out of my imagination. But I have to admit, every time a hero springs out of my imagination, he's the sort of the tall, dark, and handsome. That's my ideal, I guess. So he was I know a lot of readers then related him to Jason Momoa, right? The Game of Thrones warlord. That was never in my mind personally, but that's what a lot of people ended up envisioning for him. And no, otherwise he was just sort of, I pictured him in my head, and all my characters are kind of a mishmash of different personality traits and things that I either like or dislike, you know, in the world around me, I guess. But no, not one person in particular.
Jason Momoa, really? I didn't picture him in my head when I was reading the book.
Yeah, me either, but it was a surprising amount of readers did, and like a lot of, you know, graphics or book aesthetics or whatever, they'll have him for Griffin, which I was like, But
So continuing our discussion about genre, so the romance genre is the biggest selling genre today, but it has been unfairly, I think, criticized for being anti-feminist, of providing unrealistic portrayals of sexual and romantic relationships, and of glorifying toxic relationships. And I'm going to say now that I think that's a really unfair. That's a really unfair. Those are unfair stereotypes. So in your books and stories, you've made it clear that consent is vital in relationships, and that incorporating consent into the story isn't a death knell to romance. In fact, it helps it along. However, the line between consent and coercion hasn't always been made clear in many fantasy and romance books. Do you think that this is an issue that romance and fantasy writers have started tackling successfully in recent years?
I think more so, yeah. And I think more will come. I think that, you know, publishing is very slow also. So when I actually started writing Promise of Fire, it came out in 2016, but I probably started it in 2012, maybe. And sometimes things can happen really fast in the world around us, and the book can't catch up with it, for example, because it's already done, but, you know, not out yet or something. So I think that there's more to come. I think that I think romance authors right now are writing books different than they were writing a year ago and a year before that, but we won't actually see those books come out. Well, indie publishing is quite a bit faster, but it's kind of like on a rolling basis. So we'll see. I think we'll see more of it, and I think that the books coming out now don't necessarily represent. I think an author makes a choice now and writes a book, and then the next book it could evolve even more positively. So I think we're all learning, aren't we, as we go? And you might say, okay, that book is done, and you know, and the next one I'm gonna do things even a little differently because my thinking has evolved and I feel even more strongly about certain issues. And I think consent is a big one, though, and that's definitely. I don't think you're gonna. I mean, unless it's a taboo book and you've got warnings and whatever, then I think that consent is going to be staying around as one of the major factors in romance.
Yeah, I mean, with romance, what's interesting is that, you know, I've been reading romance since I was a teenager, and what I've noticed and what a lot of people who, you know, pay attention is the same author could be writing, you know, romance for 20 years, and we can literally see how her perception of issues like consent and all just evolve through her books. We can actually chart some of them. You know, if they've been writing long enough, we can actually chart the growth in thinking and the change attitude.
And it's been positive change. And you know, I think I would even tweak certain things in my first novel. It's, you know, you can't go back though. It's done. So, but that doesn't mean I can't do better the next time, you know?
Yeah. Oh, and there's now a very enthusiastic discussion about Griffin and who would play him. So here, I'll put some of this on here before we go on to the next lot of discussion, which is so our producer Xiao Qian says, would Jason Momoa be a good actor for Griffin if the Kingmaker Chronicles ever makes it on screen? And Zarna says, I know it would be interesting. I heard a lot of people mention Henry Cavill as Griffin.
Ooh.
And Anusha says, I never pictured him looking like Jason Momoa. And then she goes, I feel Henry Cavill is far too handsome to play him.
Yes, he needs a little bit of a gruff edge, doesn't he?
Yeah, and Kitty Kate goes, in my head, he has lots of tattoos.
Oh, really? Oh. I don't think he has a single tattoo in my head. That's what about reading, right? You just
so that's the conversation that's going on. And I think that's cute.
That is cute. Well, I have to say, when I sent in, so the publisher asked for character descriptions in case of who they might put on the cover. And at one point, they considered putting a man on the covers with Cat. We ended up with just Cat on the covers. And now we're redoing the covers for the new trade paperbacks, which don't have any people on them at all. And they're just stunning new covers. But during the what does Griffin look like discussion, which we didn't end up doing anything with, but I sent pictures. Oh, gosh, I don't know if I can remember his name. Okay, if you remember this, if you watch True Blood, he was the werewolf guy. I think his name was Alcide or something on the show, and I don't know his real name in real life.
Joe, what's his name? It's Joe something. Right?
Oh, yeah, Mangelino, maybe? Joe Mangelino?
Yeah.
That might be it. Anyway, that was my Griffin.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Henry Cavill's just too clean cut, although, as a Witcher, warlord.
Yeah, he's got that kind of square jaw, clean cut. I don't know. I watched the first episode of The Witcher and I didn't go back to it. I know people are super into it. Maybe I'm missing out, but that was it for me for the moment.
So anyway, now back to the discussion. So what do you think romance as a genre can teach other genres about writing about violence against women, sexism, and misogyny in stories?
Everything. Yeah, I haven't read like much outside of the romance genre in a while, so maybe I'm being unfair, but I think television is doing better, having equal partnerships in male and female roles. But when I think about like maybe the thrillers or whatever, or suspense novels or something that I might have read a long time ago, the man was just, working everything out, and the woman was kind of, it was a bit like the James Bond thing where the woman is just some kind of like arm candy and then the guy's doing everything. So maybe my vision is skewed. I mostly read romance, so I'm not sure, but I think I think YA is probably doing a good job with this, but a lot of YAs also have strong romantic element. Otherwise, yeah, I think romance is one of the only places where it's written for women, and it's written to show women that they deserve everything the world has to offer.
Yeah. Oh, and they've now the discussion in the YouTube chat box has now moved on to casting Kato. Anyway. So let's talk about stories, because we're talking about storytelling, and stories are one of the most powerful ways of bringing about social change, because they can help change cultural narratives and perspectives on social issues and traditions. So you touched a bit about that. You talked a bit about that a little earlier in our discussion. So in your opinion, how can authors strike a balance in their storytelling between raising awareness about tough human rights issues like violence against women and telling an engaging story without being pedantic or preachy?
Well, I think I'm really lucky to write in the fantasy space, because you can usually can dive into those issues without sounding preachy and like you're trying to teach everyone what to do, because you've extracted the situation from real life and you put it in a fantasy situation, a future, a past, a made up world. And so you can treat it, you can really dive right into it, I think, in a way that doesn't come across as preachy, as if you were in a contemporary setting. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about parenting. Okay. So parents are usually the most influential role models in a person's life. And as a mom, what do you think parents can do to help prevent violence against women and girls in future generations, and to get boys involved in helping to do so?
I'm sure there's so many things. One thing I can think of in my home, we've always discussed the importance of no, and no meaning no. And I've always impressed that upon my son, as much, in situations where anything that could come across. And I have a very specific example with my daughter, where she's just this beautiful, she's small, she's delicate, she has beautiful long blonde hair. And the girls in her class always wanted to touch her hair. She's 9 now. This was more when she was 6, 7. They'd be touching her hair and she'd say no, and they wouldn't listen. And I got involved with her and with the teacher, and I said, if she says no, it is no, and these other kids need to respect that. And I made sure my daughter understood that, and I made sure if the other kids weren't listening, that she should go to an adult and say, I said no, I don't want them to touch my hair. And it took a little work, but she doesn't have that issue anymore, luckily. And she's bigger and maybe more, able to impose herself in the situation. And that's a discussion that came back regularly at our house, was if you say no, then another person has to respect that. And if they don't, then you go to somebody who can help you. And if someone says no to you, then that's the same thing. You need to respect that, and that's it. Stop. So that's one of them. That's a very concrete example from our lives here.
Yeah. So we're going to wrap up soon. So there's let's have one or two more questions from the audience. So Kitty K says, do you have a playlist for your books?
Absolutely not. I do not like to listen to music when I write. Because it distracts me. I like to sing along. This is really probably stupid, but if I'm listening to music, I'll be singing along and I won't be writing. So I have to cut off the music. I don't have music when I'm writing. And since I spend a lot of time writing, I have to say that's kind of like phased me out of the music space, and I basically don't know what's going on or what's out or what's popular or anything except for what my kids put on. And so basically I know Taylor Swift and Selena Gomez, and that's about it.
Okay. So one last question from the audience before we go to our closing questions. So Zarna12 asks, will you ever write a separate novel or even a short story regarding Griffin's family? It would be interesting to see how everything got started and how Beta team met.
Well, I don't have a plan to write a novel that goes in the past like that. But interestingly, in A Curse of Queens, which is Jocasta and Flint's upcoming story that comes out in October, there's a prologue which gives us insight into their life back in their village before they began this whole campaign to take over their home realm of Cinta, and then they meet Kat and Spiral, and that grows into the quest to sort of overhaul their world of Thelyria. So the first 15 pages or so of A Curse of Queens does go back into the past, and it shows us that their life in that village. And Beta team is already together. They're already a group of friends, and it shows us what happens between Flynn and Jocasta that makes their relationship so fraught during the original trilogy. And so if you've read the original trilogy, you know how sort of awkward they are around each other, and this prologue explains why. And then we launch into the, you know, the big adventure of A Curse of Queens and their, you know, evolving relationship.
Yeah. So, final two questions. You have been so very incredibly supportive of our Read for Pixels campaign and our anti-violence against women work as a whole. So, this is a Captain Obvious question which we ask all our Read for Pixels authors. Why do you support the cause to end violence against women?
Who wouldn't support a good cause like that? I don't see any reason not to. I wish everybody was, you know, if everybody in the world took 10 minutes out of their day once a year to support violence against women, I think we'd already be doing better. I just, it's so important. I think we've already, as women, there's probably not a single one of us who hasn't been in some kind of situation that left a mark on them. You know, something scary, something that, you know, made them really uncomfortable. And that's on the lighter side of things. I mean, then it can go towards really, really terrible situations. And you know, even attacks on a woman's right to choose how, you know, what she does with her body and her health. Things we're seeing in the United States, you know, attacks on you know, women's right to choose. Recently, there were lawmakers trying to put into motion things like making it illegal to abort an ectopic pregnancy, which I have personally experienced, and that is not a pregnancy that will ever go anywhere, and it has a very good chance of killing the mother too. And so basically, I know from personal experience that if you don't get that totally not viable pregnancy taken care of, you will erupt inside and bleed to death. So an attack, making that illegal for a woman, is, for me, absolutely another case of violence against women. And I just don't understand how. I feel like the world is not evolving in the right direction in a lot of ways. So any little bit we can do is a good thing.
Yeah. And you know, what do you think authors can do to help with the cultural change? Because that's what's needed, right? You need a cultural change in order to drive all the you know, legislative changes and all. What can authors do to help with the cultural change needed to eradicate violence against women and girls?
I just think representing the problems that are real and exist in your books, and then you know, showing how to stand up for what women need. I think, I'm not sure what else an author could do in terms of their own, you know, writing and work. I think we can't ignore the issues. That's another reason why I said you have to, you know, put in characters that aren't always doing the right thing, because how else can you bounce off of that to show, you know, what needs to be done, what's healthier and better for everyone, and women in particular.
Yeah, definitely. Now I'm gonna stick myself back on screen. So everyone who who came in a little late, this is me, the disembodied voice off screen, having a chat with Amanda. And thank you so much for the excellent discussion, Amanda.
Well, thank you.
It's a tough, you know, violence against women. It's a tough issue, and you've shared some really, really thoughtful insights into, you know, how fiction can help with, you know, getting people to think about the issue.
That's it. Yeah, if it's getting people to think, and maybe to understand that there are paths out, or, you know, things that can change.
Yeah, and so So in case you missed the beginning of the session, we're excited to let you know that Amanda has donated a couple of super exclusive goodies to the stash of author treats that we have up as perks for donors on the Read for Pixels Rally Up fundraising page. So I'm gonna put a little slide up, show everyone where to go get it. So the first goodie is Amanda's A Promise of Fire bundle. So you've heard Amanda talk about the new edition that's coming out soon. So she's offering one generous Read for Pixels donor a really special bundle, which includes one copy of A Promise of Fire in the new trade edition paperback. It'll be signed and personalized for you by Amanda, and she'll tuck in 2 bookmarks. And here's the fun part, everyone. Amanda will also type and sign a note from a character of the donor's choice. Now, I've noticed everyone chatting away in the YouTube chat box, and I know you all have your favorites. And here's another great thing about this bundle. Is happy to send it anywhere worldwide. Just make sure you give us a viable address. Okay, because the pandemic has just made a mess of if you don't live in France where Amanda is right now, she has to send it abroad. Just make sure you give us fill in your address carefully. There's only one of this bundle. On the Rally Up fundraising page. And if you are new to Amanda's wonderful fantasy worlds, this is a great way to get started with reading her books. Now you can go to tinyurl.com/R4P Rally Up IWD 2022. And this is case sensitive. So type that in carefully. And also Xiaoqin has shared that link in the chat box. So you can click on it to go there. Now, there's also goodie number 2 for those of you who are novice writers. So this is the Amanda Bouchet critique bundle. So if you're a novice fantasy romance or science fiction / space opera romance author looking for a professional critique of your work, Amanda is offering a most excellent critique bundle for one Read for Pixels donor. And I can tell you all right now that these critique bundles that Amanda offers, and we have other critique bundles as well, and authors don't usually offer them. Normally they'll go like, I don't want to see your work because they're just busy. Everyone's really busy, and Amanda's really busy as well. So Amanda's going to take time out to read your work and help you, with some critique. And here's the best part. So this bundle includes, now you have a choice. You can either send in a written critique of your query letter draft plus the first 10 pages of your work in progress, or you can choose to send in the first 20 pages of your work in progress. Either one to Amanda to have a look at, read through, and critique. And then after that, you get a 30-minute Zoom call with Amanda to discuss the critique. So you can ask Amanda any follow-up questions that you would have based on the comments and suggestions that she would have left in the comment section in your copy of the whip that you sent her. Now, only English language works, please, and any subgenre of romance fiction is welcome. But there's only one of this. So if you would like Amanda to critique your work, hurry on over to the Rally Up page and just click to donate the $200 that we've asked for, and to donate the $200 to us. And I'm going to assure you that we're going to put that $200 to really, really good use. And if you want to find out more about Read for Pixels, go to bit.ly/Read for Pixels. Again, this is case sensitive. So this, I was just saying to Amanda that before we went on air, that this program has been running for almost 10 years. Next year is going to be our 10th anniversary for this program, so check it out. And we also want to let you know about our first charity anthology called Giving the Devil His Due. And there are 16 stories in this anthology from 16 really, really great science fiction, fantasy, and horror authors. And it's a cross between the Twilight Zone and Promising Young Woman. And it's now available anywhere in the world. You can just go to Amazon or Google Play or Book Depository or any major bookseller worldwide and order either paperback copy or your ebook copy. And additionally, we have teamed up with 12 of the 16 authors to offer an exclusive limited edition anthology book plate for early bird buyers, and each author will sign 16 book plates, and it'll be first come, first served. So each book plate includes a resource for domestic violence and sexual assault victims and survivors in 205 countries. So for more information about the anthology, go to bit.ly/giving the devil his due. And if you are a blogger, a book blogger, you can get in touch with us, or you can sign up for our blog tour. Just go to the link that's on screen right now, and you can sign up for our blog tour, and we'll send you a package that includes an ebook. And we're going to have this blog tour for the anthology in April, which is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So you'll be sort of, it's not just promoting the book, it's actually giving you a great platform to talk about the issue. And all net proceeds from the book goes towards keeping the Pixel Project's campaigns, progress, and initiatives, such as this one, Alive and Kicking. And of course, you can find out more about violence against women and what you can do about it by visiting our website at www.thepixelproject.net. Now, Amanda has a few announcements to make. She's got some really exciting news coming up. So over to you, Amanda.
Thank you. Well, this is a really big year for me, actually, because I have a brand new book coming out, and we have the Kingmaker Chronicles that are being reissued in trade paperback with gorgeous new covers and bonus materials. So A Promise of Fire comes out on April 5th, which is coming right up. Breath of Fire follows in early May, and Heart on Fire in early June. So that's the original trilogy with Kat and Griffin, the characters we were talking about. And so those books, they all have a map and beautiful artwork of Kat and Griffin, gorgeous new covers. And A Promise of Fire has 2 bonus scenes from Griffin's point of view. And all the books have a big glossary, which actually evolves from book to book. So it's not like exactly the same glossary for each of the books. It grows with the books and the world and the story. So that's really exciting. Lots of bonus materials and those beautiful new covers. And then in October, A Curse of Queens comes out. So we're calling that book 4 in the Kingmaker series, but it's really the start of something new, because it's a new story arc for the world of Thelyria, and it's new characters taking the leading roles. And so that one is Flynn and Jocasta, if you know them already from the original trilogy. Of course, Night Chaser. We have Night Chaser and Starbreaker. Dawnmaker still needs to be written. That's book 3 in that trilogy. But I haven't started that yet. So that's to come. So anyway, in terms of publication, and then also the novella I was talking about with Pierce, one of Griffin's family, that came out in an anthology, but I'll be publishing that individually this summer at some point, maybe July or August. So I'll have the original trilogy coming out again, then Pierce's novella in the summer, and A Curse of Queens in October. And on top of that, I have 3 signings I'll be at. So I think the tickets are probably already sold for them, but if anyone who's listening is going to be there, I would be thrilled to see you. I'll be at the Rare events, which is romance author reader events. That's Rare Paris on April 2nd, Rare Edinburgh at the end of May, and I'll be at ApollyCon at the end of July. So if anyone wants to come see me or get a book signed, I would love to see you.
Wow, you have a really busy year this year.
Considering there was nothing for the last 2 years, nothing published, no events. It was no in-person events. Yeah, all of a sudden 2022 is like an explosion. So it's exciting.
Boom, we get everyone, everywhere.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so everyone, so just to let you all know again, there's only one of each prize, well, each treat from Amanda. So if you want that, Amanda talked a bit about the really, really cool new edition of A Promise of Fire that's out. If you want that, plus if you like Griffin, you can have a note for Griffin.
Yeah.
Have a note for Griffin if you want a note from Griffin, and Amanda will type that out. Whatever he has to say to you, Amanda
Or
will
a note
type
from
it out.
Cato.
Or, or you want, cat to snark at you. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
So,
Griffin has to be loyal to Cat. I mean, so it can't be a love note, but otherwise.
yeah. So anyway, we should wrap up now because we've been chatting for an hour and 15 minutes and the
Oh,
time
wow.
has just flown by. So
Yes.
everyone, thank you so much for joining us today and for the really
Thank you.
lively discussion in the YouTube chat box. It's been a pleasure having you with us today, Amanda.
Thank you. It was a pleasure for me too. And thank you for your great questions. And thank you to everyone who came and added questions from the chat. That's lots of fun.
Oh, and here's a really nice comment from the audience to wrap things up. Thank you, Amanda and Pixels. I think your books do teach and inspire people to be good.
Oh, thank you. That means the world to me.
So good night or good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. One more thing, if anyone's interested, we still have 3 live stream sessions with authors next weekend. So, go to the Read for Pixels page on our website and you can get access to all the schedules and stuff there. All right. Good night, everyone. Oh, good morning. Good night, everyone. Or good afternoon, depending on your time zone. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.